Good morning. So I want to talk to you today about the beauty, wisdom, and importance of liberalism and conservatism in the United States. I want to dedicate my remarks to all my United States history and Gov students. They're forced to put up with my frequent ramblings, explanations, and preaching on this topic. Now, you heard me right. I said beauty and wisdom within the two schools of thought. If treated right, there's much beauty here. And for wisdom, well, these two intellectual traditions have much of it. Wisdom is defined as judgment based upon past experience. And that is what conservatism and liberalism provide for us. Perhaps not always, but frequently, these two traditions assist our discussion on a topic, and they shed light and wisdom on the debate in the process. Now, I'm very interested in this subject on its own merits, but was prompted and motivated to talk to you today about it as a result of the great political divide that has opened up within our society in the past 18 months. Many have called it the most polarized our country has ever been. Now, I remind my students, and my students and I know that just cannot be true because we fought a horrific civil war in the 19th century over the very meaning of freedom and liberty for all Americans. Nonetheless, it is quite evident that this is a particularly divided era. For me, I firmly believe that the best of liberalism and conservatism offer a solution to our present malady. However, it will take work on our part also. We must work hard to find common ground and exercise empathy for the other side of the debate. You should recognize empathy as one of the core values of the school. As a school community, we are engaged in this work in our ongoing, courageous, and community conversations. This leads me to our first fundamental distinction between liberalism and conservatism. Now, I've told my government students for years that the single best way to tell whether you are liberal or conservative in the 21st century is to identify your view of government. So having said that, let's do a little exercise on that topic right now. Do you view government as a necessary evil that even at its best will likely waste your tax money and at any moment could infringe upon your rights? Perhaps you're a conservative at heart. Or do you see government as the last best hope of mankind, where people put their heads together, pool their resources, and solve society's most pressing problems? Then liberalism is for you. But seriously, think about it. There is much wisdom, is there not, in each school of thought. It is our work as a democratic society to find common ground between these two philosophies. Just like our school community, this requires engagement, empathy, and compromise. Let me give you a couple of historical examples to illustrate this point. President Ronald Reagan did nothing less than restore conservatism in the United States. The single most defining words by him in the 1980s were, "Not only is government not the solution, government is the problem." He planned to liberate Americans from the suffocating grasp of overregulation and taxation. He also believed firmly that there's no social program that can match the dignity of a job. From the other vantage point came President Johnson. At the height of liberalism in the 1960s, he wanted Americans to harness the power of government to build the Great Society. He did nothing less than declare war on poverty, believing collective government efforts could defeat poverty. Now, to me, both these approaches have much to teach us in this present climate. The work is to see the wisdom in both views and to find common ground. I'd like to discuss a few more topics that will allow us to explore the dichotomy of liberalism and conservatism a little further. And really, that's the relative value of nothing less than liberty and equality themselves. Now, I'm not suggesting that one side or the other does not value both liberty and equality. But you will see that I'm saying that when push comes to shove, when those two fundamental values are in conflict, liberalism will surrender a little liberty in order to support more equality, something they might call justice. Conservatism frequently will allow for some inequality in order to defend and maximize liberty. Really, at the most fundamental level, liberals want government to help people, and conservatives want government mostly to leave people alone, particularly in the economy. There's no easy answer here, but understanding each side can bring us to common ground and compromise. Empathy promotes understanding. I would like to briefly explore two present-day political topics from the differing perspectives of liberalism and conservatism, with an eye toward finding common ground. Nothing suggests that our immigration policy has failed, like the firing of tear gas at our border this past week. We have failed for a generation at any kind of comprehensive immigration reform. Now, liberalism reminds us that the American dream is refreshed and invigorated by each new wave of immigration. Conservatism plainly believes that there is no nation without secure borders. Both perspectives have much to teach. But where is the common ground? It seems that it lies in common sense immigration policy that is made in Washington and enforced at the border, that includes a pathway for citizenship for the approximately 12 million undocumented immigrants who currently reside in the U.S. Next is the thorny problem of affirmative action. This is the practice of using race, ethnicity, and gender in hiring and college admissions to address past discrimination. You may know that Harvard University was recently in federal court amid allegation that its affirmative action policy was discriminatory generally, and particularly against Asian and Asian American students. Now, this is not an easy topic to tackle by any stretch, but all of you will be facing college admission boards in the near future, and you seniors in the coming months. Once again, liberalism and conservatism offer differing views, but ultimately common ground if we look for it carefully. Liberalism suggests that this is an excellent way to promote diversity and to continue to undo years of discrimination in the United States. Conservatism questions whether we can ever reach a colorblind society by continuing to take race and ethnicity into account in admissions. Like other topics we mentioned, this solution requires engagement, empathy, and compromise. Both perspectives seem to find common ground in the notion that there will come a day that affirmative action will have outlived its usefulness in an egalitarian society. Now, for the students, here's the part where I make a few recommendations to you. This is chapel, so I'll take the liberty to preach a little. All of you should develop, while in high school, a real understanding and comfort level with these two intellectual traditions. I want to note that I firmly believe that many independents have not sufficiently explored the two, because if they had, they would likely find that they are aligned with one of the traditions. Now, an informed independence is fine, because that takes place after closely looking at both liberalism and conservatism. But exploring these two political approaches is very important for students. It will empower you and enrich your understanding of so many topics and the political history of the United States. But I also want to identify what I think to be a real danger in this debate and caution you from it. It is of the utmost importance that you do not vilify the other side of the equation. That is, do not make villains of your opponents. That is closely related to the practice of accusing your political opponent of conspiracy, of somehow undermining the United States, of literally not wanting the best for the United States. This poisons the waters of discourse in the United States, and it's flat out dangerous to our beloved practice of self-government. My last recommendation is to be careful of the pitfalls of both traditions and use them to encourage a certain kind of patriotism. The pitfall on the left is that liberals are often very cynical patriots. They may see the U.S. acting only out of self-interest and greed, and it spoils and distorts their sense of America. Too often the right, or conservatives, get seduced by a version of blind patriotism that's very dangerous. The moment you surrender independent judgment to blind patriotism, all will be lost. So what kind of patriotism do I recommend? I call it informed or critical patriotism, or critical citizenship. With a sense of real history, it includes a massive well of appreciation for this republic and for what it has accomplished. In the present, it has very high expectations for the nation and holds it to a high standard. With an eye to the future, it remains critical and informed about what the nation is doing at any given time period. So I'll leave you with one final thought. The eminent British Prime Minister Winston Churchill said that democracy is the worst form of government except when compared to all the others. And democracy requires a comprehension of the fundamental political traditions that have served us so well for so long, liberalism and conservatism. Thanks for listening.